Hey, welcome back. Just halfway through hour two. It's a terrific Tuesday on Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. In case you're just tuning in, it's been a monster of a show today. And in case you missed it, I ripped a deck of cards in half with some inhuman mental strength. And we also had breaking news while we're on air here. That much to the joy of Frank and I and hopefully other peace-loving Americans, John Bolton is officially gone. Donald Trump has asked for his resignation and received it. And there's another dead hawk. And to me, that seems to be good news. Hopefully the markets will like it as well. And joining us now to keep rolling through this hour, a powerhouse of an author, an attorney, a frequent Newsmax contributor, it's author, criminal lawyer, law professor, civil liberties defender, author of more than 40 books, including his most recent book, which we'll be discussing today, Defending Israel, the story of my relationship with my most challenging client. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you for joining us today for a Liquid Lunch.
Well, thank you so much.
Hey, so before we get into the book and all that great stuff, I just would like to get your take. You've been all around this stuff. You're mentioned in half the articles. Anytime someone can stick your name in an article, it seems like they do. But what's your take on these Inspector General reports on James Comey?
Well, I think it was exactly right. Comey should be condemned for trying to launder material that some of which ended up being classified through a law professor. If he really wanted to engage in an act of civil disobedience to bring down the president, he should have had the courage of his convictions to get on television and say, look, I'm handing these documents over. I know it's not proper, but I'm doing it. Instead, he snuck around and he gave it to some law professor who leaked it to the New York Times. That's just not the way the former director of the FBI should behave. So I think he was properly rebuked. I also think it was a proper decision not to prosecute him. There was no evidence that at the time he leaked the material, he knew that there was any classified information contained therein. He did the wrong thing, but there's a big difference between doing the wrong thing and doing something that's criminal.
If somebody wanted to get really ticky-tacky, they could have probably found a way to get something criminal on them, but it wouldn't have been our justice system. And anywhere in that report, did it say that James Comey was exonerated? Did they exonerate him?
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. They really condemned him. It's very important to maintain the distinction between doing wrong and doing criminal. And I think we should not be weaponizing the criminal justice system. When Comey made the decision not to criminally prosecute Hillary Clinton, many people were upset about that. But basically, the Justice Department applied the same standard to him as it did to Clinton. They both did things that were wrong, but neither did things that crossed the line to criminality. So I was pleased with the Inspector General's report. I think in general, the Inspector General, who I don't know, has done a very, very credible job in presenting a balanced picture of wrongdoing and not criminal conduct in the Justice Department. I think he's done a very good job.
Professor Dershowitz, you have been one of the most articulate and outspoken defenders of Israel for literally decades and quite an intellectual authority on the subject. Tell us why, after 40 books, you decided to write this particular book, Defending Israel. What motivated the timing and the subject of this particular book?
Well, I purposely published it at the beginning of the academic year because I want students who are going back to college to read this book because they're going to be confronted with virulent lies about Israel and anti-Semitic attacks on supporters of Israel. And it's important for them to have in their possession a book that really makes the case very strongly in favor of Israel. Look, I'm critical of some Israeli policies. Just today, the Prime Minister of Israel announced the possibility of annexing certain parts of the West Bank. I'm not sure I agree with those policies. I have to look hard at what he's done. But Israel certainly has the right to exist, to defend itself, to thrive in a very dangerous neighborhood. And I thought it was important to tell the story. I started defending Israel literally 70 years ago, when Israel was established in 1948. And I've been doing it for the last 70 years. And this is my story. It's how I met the various heads of Israel, from Golda Meir to Benjamin Netanyahu, and how I met the various presidents of the United States and the relationship between the presidents and the prime minister. I tell some incredibly interesting, some funny, and some poignant stories about some of the leaders of Israel and some of the leaders of the United States. I condemn Barack Obama for stabbing Israel in the back and lying to me in the Oval Office when he said he had Israel's back. I didn't realize that he meant he had Israel's back to put a target on it. And so although I'm a liberal Democrat, I support President Trump when he does the right thing in relation to Israel. And I attack the man I voted for, President Obama, when he does the wrong thing. That's what bipartisanism means.
Yeah, and Professor, I just want to ask you, because no one really wants to go on the record, but in your view, you've been with presidents of all countries, all nations, many of our own presidents here. Is Trump the best president for Israel that you've ever seen?
Well, we've had a lot of good presidents for Israel. Harry Truman recognized Israel. Lyndon Johnson allowed Israel really to develop a nuclear defense. Bill Clinton was very good for Israel. The book hasn't been closed yet on Donald Trump. The two actions that he took, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and recognizing Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights, were both excellent actions, which put President Trump high on the scale of presidents who have been supportive of Israel. But, you know, he has another year and a half to this term and perhaps 4 more years in another term. So nobody should write history and make decisions about any president until that role has terminated, until he's no longer the president. So I'll reserve judgment on that. I will say I think he's been a very good president for Israel. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu has been a very good prime minister for Israel. And the two of them get along superbly. And that's a very positive thing for America and for Israel, because Israel is America's strongest ally. It helps with intelligence gathering. It helps with weapon development. And it helps keep the peace in the Middle East.
Professor, in the final minute we have left, why do you refer to Israel as your toughest client? I mean, can Israel really be a tougher client than OJ?
Yes, because Israel is being attacked and condemned all over the world on university campuses. And I think defending Israel has become harder and harder. I tell the story about how easy it was to defend Israel in the 50s and the 60s, even through the 70s, and how now it's become so much more difficult. So they are a challenging client. I've had many challenging clients, as you know. But in terms of importance, I think Israel has been my most challenging client. And it's not my official client. I have represented Israel on a few occasions. But I talk about the client in a metaphorical sense. People have referred to me as Israel's lead lawyer in the court of public opinion. And I take that role seriously. And I wrote this book in my capacity as Israel's leading lawyer in the court of public opinion, designed for public opinion, not a court of law. And I hope young people particularly read it, and adults give it to their children who are in high school or college.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Go out and get his book. And he is always generous with his time for us here at Newsmax. Thank you again, Professor Dershowitz. You stay right there. Quick break, coming back at you right after this.